stealing my things and killing my dog, right? Okay, the 8 spider spears belong to me now, the Xuantian Treasure Record belongs to me now, and the Immortal Grass belongs to me now. Stop pretending, you are the son of luck, then I am the villain of fate. Keywords of the novel. Man in Douluo, opening stolen by Tang San without a pop-up window. Man in Douluo, opening stolen by Tang San. Download the complete text, Man in Douluo, opening stolen by Tang San. Latest chapter reading. At the beginning of chapter 1, Tang San stole the house. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. At the beginning of chapter 1, Tang San stole the house. The air before the new year was cold and gloomy, especially at night. At the foot of the mountain on the north side of Shenghun village, the cool mountain wind passes over the hill, and the bamboo forest sways with a rustling sound. A thin and small black figure walks against the wind, its scent carried away by the cold wind, and the crisp sound of running is covered by the rustling bamboo forest. With a flick of the hand, a stone with edges shot out. Behind the low bamboo house, the bamboo dog house let out a whimper and then fell silent. Merchants pursue profits, but those with intentions are few. Zhu Wu, the 100-year-old wolf poison is extremely poisonous. If you allow it to be sold to drug dealers, it may be turned into poison and sold to malicious people, causing harm to innocent people. Today, I will come and take it, just to avoid it. Tang San murmured in his heart. Don't worry, I will definitely use it for the right path, punish evil and promote good, and it can also be considered as making the most of everything. Whether it is a hidden weapon or a poison, in his opinion, whether it is malicious or not is not determined by itself, but by the user. When used in a regular and positive way, when used in an evil way, it becomes evil. Punishing evil and promoting good is precisely the purpose and responsibility of the establishment of the Tang sect. With light feet, a few jumps landed behind the courtyard, bending down to dig out clusters of wolf venom that were covered by a dustpan in the corner of the vegetable garden. Without much hesitation, he quickly turned around and left. One night without words, the next morning. Tang San, I'll fuck you. Zhu Wu stood behind the courtyard with a gloomy expression, gritting his teeth. 100-year-old wolf poison, sold to pharmacists for at least 5 golden soul coins, is undoubtedly a huge sum of money for ordinary families. Moreover, he had the privilege of picking up this wolf venom plant on a steep cliff after exploring the mountains for a whole day with his special sensing ability. Climbing a few hundred meters off the cliff at the age of less than 6 can be said to be risking his life. How can you not be angry now that you have been stolen? The key is that Tang San is not stealing medicine from his house for the first time, which really makes him angry. Rhubarb didn't bark. As if thinking of something, he quickly ran to the doghouse, bent down and reached out to explore the shadow, gently shaking his dog legs, which were already hard and sturdy. His eyes suddenly turned red and he quickly reached out and pulled it out. In the line of sight, the blood under the ears has dried up and turned black. On one side of the cold body, there are stones brought out due to dragging, with bloodstains at the tip. Tang San, with the help of a mother thief, I'll fuck my mother. I can't help but spit out my national essence again. It hits the dog's ear accurately and specifically steals poisonous grass. Who else besides Tang San can have this demand and this precision? At first, to verify, he secretly went to the mountaintop that Tang San went to every day, and indeed transplanted poisonous grass on it, including one stolen from his house. As a traveler who has read the original work, he has a clear understanding of Tang San's abilities and background. I just wanted to poison the hidden weapon, but I couldn't afford it, so I thought of stealing it. If you can't get it through normal channels, steal it. Isn't that how Xuantian Baolu came about? A dog can't change its habit of eating feces. It's fortunate that I got those few herbs and distributed the first batch of seeds to my fellow villagers who helped me sow and earn extra income. When I thought about your family, it added to your income. However, I was targeted and repeatedly came to my house to steal medicinal herbs. The world of cultivation and fantasy is cruel, and cultivation can be described as going against the sky. Therefore, stealing natural resources and treasures to nourish oneself is also a common occurrence. He, who had read countless fantasy novels about immortality and chivalry in his past life, naturally understood this. This kind of thing also depends on the situation, right? It's easy to say that stealing someone you don't know or a soul beast from a different race. Stealing someone who has shown kindness to you feels somewhat shameless. Raising an immature white-eyed wolf is not as good as a pig or dog. He became angry at the thought of being stolen several times. Cough, cough. A light cough suddenly came. Zhu Wu instinctively turned his head. Inside the bamboo house, with frosty white hair on his temples, an elderly man in his 70s with hunched stools was walking towards the backyard with a cane. Zhu Gang, 71 years old this year, is his grandfather, who was also the person who kindly picked him up and adopted him back then. The reason why he knows these is because he was reborn from memory. Many things, heard in the ear, were not known before, but after learning this world language, it becomes clear. I can only say, dog blood, quite dog blood. Xiaowu, has our family been robbed again? Zhu Gang is also aware that he has lost medicinal herbs several times at home. Although he is old and his hearing is not very good, he can still tell his tone. His grandson Zhu Wugang is clearly cursing, probably because he has lost some medicinal herbs at home. And it's very likely that the medicinal herb I got after searching all day yesterday. My grandson said, but it can sell for a lot of money and have a good new year. Not seeking revenge is in vain. Tang San waited for Zhu Wu to take a deep breath and suppress his anger, holding up rhubarb. The backyard is not big, and I quickly walked to the door. Seeing the yellow dog in his grandson's arms, Zhu Gang's eyes also turned red, and his sighs were tinged with sadness. Hey, people's hearts are not ancient, people's hearts are not ancient. Grandpa, don't worry, people are watching the sky, and evil will come to an end. This kind of beast with a mother but no parents to teach will not have a good ending in the future. Zhu Wu spoke out in relief and looked down at the big yellow in his arms. As for the big yellow, let's deal with it later and take some to Grandpa Jack's house. It's almost Chinese New Year, and the pigs at home should also be killed. It's time for Grandpa Jack to find someone to help and pre-sale it in advance. As a specialized student majoring in animal husbandry and veterinary medicine, and with a pig farm at home, I will be employed upon graduation. Raising pigs, he was a professional in his past life. The reason why I know some Chinese herbs is also because of this. Although the teaching content of modern animal husbandry and veterinary medicine mostly belongs to Western medicine, there are also specialized courses in traditional Chinese medicine knowledge. Many of the things left by our ancestors are still useful, and he studies them seriously. For example, Gojian, also known as heartbreaking grass, is a commonly used traditional Chinese veterinary herb that has a deworming effect on pigs, cows, and sheep. Feeding small amounts of it to livestock can also promote growth. In other areas, it is also known as pig ginseng. Proper feeding can increase the appetite of pigs. Speaking of which, Gojian was also the first Chinese herbal medicine he found in this world, which helped him accumulate some initial funds. With enough funds, I have to raise a piglet to support my family and improve my food. That's good, Zhu Gang sighed again and nodded slightly. Although they have developed a relationship by raising a dog, it is not easy for ordinary families like them to eat meat, and it is a pity to bury it. Bring more. Your grandfather Jack helped our family a lot a few years ago, and we can't forget our kindness. Also, the Wang family's wife who fed you milk when she was a child. Alright, Grandpa's going to make breakfast for you. It's all from poor families, oh, this world. He glanced at Zhu Wu's big yellow in his arms and sighed as he walked slowly towards the kitchen. After a period of time, after breakfast, Zhu Wu continued to handle the body of the yellow dog. After finishing the task, tidy up a bit, open the window in the bedroom, and practice the 8 Vajra technique in the morning to move your muscles and bones. The diamond longevity skill was learned by him in his past life by watching Taoist Zhang Jishuan's teaching video online. There is a pig farm at home, and it is necessary to work regularly. Over time, minor health problems may occur. After complaining a few words in the alumni group, a classmate posted a video link suggesting practicing. Coming into this world, he started practicing at the age of over 2 and has been practicing for nearly 4 years. The Vajra longevity skill is divided into 2 parts. The external skill, Vajra skill, focuses on practicing physical form and is suitable for early morning practice when the sun rises. The internal skill, longevity skill, is mainly used to train the mind and spirit, suitable for practicing in the quiet night and bright moon. It is for practicing Vajra in the morning, practicing longevity at night, balancing hardness and softness, and harmonizing yin and yang. Anyway, this is how encyclopedias introduce it. Of course, there are also introductions such as refining essence and transforming qi, refining qi and transforming gods, and the unity of heaven and humanity. As a modern person, he certainly wouldn't believe such nonsense. However, practicing for a long time to strengthen the body, enhance immunity, and reduce the incidence of diseases in daily life is true. The same goes for him in this world, as he has not yet realized that he has developed any internal strength or anything. Anyway, as the only cultivation method brought to this world, and indeed having the effect of strengthening the body, it must be persisted in practice. External pneumatic stimulation induces internal qi, while internal pneumatic stimulation drives external qi. He still remembers this introduction online. He doesn't know if there is internal power in this world, but the spiritual energy and soul power of heaven and earth are real. To be honest, he still has some expectations of developing innate soul power like Tang San through practicing this set of diamond longevity skills. Of course, even if he doesn't practice, he should still have soul power. After all, what can be traversed is not easy. Moreover, his damn scumbag comes from that place. I once tried to teach my grandfather Zhu Gang for a reason, but unfortunately my body was so hunched that I couldn't do it at all, so I gave up. Grandpa, I'm out. After finishing the whole set, Zhu Wu carried a bamboo basket filled with dog meat on his back and went out. Not long ago, at old Jack's house. Xiao Wu, don't worry, this thief grandpa will find a way to find out what he says and seek justice for you. If such a thing happens in the village, it will not only lose the face of the village, but also the face of grandpa and me as the village head. After listening to the general situation, old Jack was very angry. Not bad, this matter can't be settled like that. Old Jack's wife also spoke in a tone of anger, Grandma will go out and gather some information later. I want to see which family's trash has done such shameless things. I'll find a chance in the afternoon to inquire, too, said Jack's healthy son with a frown. Then came old Jack's daughter-in-law, and the whole family was filled with righteous indignation. Unfortunately, it is destined to return without success. Tang San is nothing but a person who is not even taught by his own father in the Xuantian Treasure Record. The first thing I think about when I get wolf poison is definitely to poison my precious Tang clan hidden weapon, rather than selling money to supplement my family. The sudden overnight wealth and extravagant consumption of poor families are traceable, but Tang San cut off the clues directly from the root. Zhu Wu sighed inwardly. The matter of revenge still has to rely on oneself. Thank you Grandpa Jack, Uncle Jerry. I still want to express my gratitude to the old Jack family. As a village chief, this is all that Grandpa should do. Old Jack shook his head. After a moment of relief, the conversation changed and continued, Xiao Wu, calculate the time. The deacon of the Martial Soul Hall should come to our village in the next few days to help preside over the Martial Soul Awakening ceremony. You have reached your age and will also participate this time. The matter of killing pigs should wait for the awakening ceremony of the Martial Soul to end. The awakening of the Martial Soul is a big event, and if you have the opportunity to awaken your soul power, it will be a great joy. It's better not to kill anyone when it's close to a happy occasion. Believing in this superstition, Zhu Wu sighed and nodded obediently no matter where he went in the world. Greetings, bid farewell and leave. Newcomers and new books, welcome to taste. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Father's loyalty and son's filial piety. Surprisingly, it's myself. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Father's loyalty and son's filial piety. Surprisingly, it's myself. It was night. After completing a set of longevity exercises, Zhu Wu returned to his bedroom. From under the bed, I took out a homemade medicine tube and pestle rod, and then took out a bag of homemade charcoal. I started pounding the charcoal with a creaking sound. 1 nitrate and 2 can also be considered as detailed gunpowder formulas in previous lives. Of course, this formula has been corrected to be more reasonable in modern times. As for why I know, I learned it online. Who hasn't had a dream of traveling when he was young and reckless? Of course, the cost is premature death. This is undoubtedly a sad story. Douluo continent is a world mainly focused on cultivating martial souls. During this period, the gunpowder formula was not yet fully developed, and in practical applications, only fireworks and firecrackers were set off. The power was very small and did not receive official attention. The more mature original works of creation are only useful for Tang San when making hidden weapons such as Buddha's anger and Tang Lotus. This is the knowledge brought by Tang San in his previous life, rather than the original Douluo continent. Otherwise, the original plot may be another matter. For example, the Min clan is definitely in high demand. Isn't the Flying Soul Master airdropping explosives fragrant? However, although there is no gunpowder in this world, the materials used for manufacturing are not difficult to purchase. There are also pharmacies, but due to their civilian use, the regulations are not strict. Like saltpeter, in addition to being the main material for making laxatives, it is also widely used in the production of glass and pigments. Sulfur is crushed into powder and used for insecticidal and deworming purposes. It is reported that soul masters at Notting College choose to purchase it before entering the soul hunting forest to hunt soul beasts. Therefore, taking advantage of several visits to Notting City, he bought some in batches and has been secretly manufacturing gunpowder at home ever since. Originally only for backup self-protection, after all, traveling through a mystical and extraordinary world, the fairness of the law is limited to small people. When there is a conflict of interest between the common class and the aristocratic and soul master classes, the former's rights will inevitably be sacrificed, which is completely predictable. Just because he can avoid causing trouble doesn't mean that others won't take the initiative to cause trouble. The tragedy of a mother is the best example. As if remembering something, my heart feels a bit heavy. So, if you want to protect yourself, you must have your own strength. And gunpowder is the self-protection measure he can take at the moment. Tang San, on the other hand, committed theft several times in a row, and even killed him as his son for several years. His close friend, Da Huang, really angered him. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them, and he can even compromise by 3 points. If someone repeatedly offends me and doesn't return it, then he can still be considered a man. Damn it, I can't blow you up. The famous saying of the 3 great Buddhas of Tang, the way to take death, is still fresh in his memory. Since he has decided to seek revenge, he must be thorough. It would be best to eradicate the root cause and let the father and son spiral upwards together, so as not to leave any future troubles. Make a few more copies. If the martial soul can truly awaken its soul power, it can also be used to hunt soul beasts and obtain soul rings in the soul beast forest in the future. As for using it to retaliate against Tang San, you need to find the right time. With Tang Hao, the title Douluo, around, you'll be caught. I really don't understand Tang San. He has a formula for gunpowder, and if he doesn't make good explosives, he must guard the hidden weapons. Well, since the deacon of the Wulin Hall is coming these days, he might miss it. He will not go out to look for medicine in the next few days. Be relieved to make gunpowder at home. The blind brother Luo Tauga is rumored to be fighting at home. You need awesome. I don't want twin martial souls, nor do I want innate full soul power. Innate soul power at levels 7 or 8 is enough. Although I really want to kill my father, I still need a good martial soul. Father's kindness and filial piety are actually me. In my heart, my mother sells criticism while mocking herself and grinding charcoal. 2 days later, the wooden house in the village center. The sound of footsteps came, and Zhu Wu, who was in line, turned to look at the door. It was old Jack, followed by Tang San. The latter's gaze swept over, his face dull, as if it wasn't him who came to steal medicine from his house 2 days ago, and his acting skills were perfect. I should say, you have such thick skin. The gunpowder is ready, and I'll see you later. I'll pretend not to see you, and my gaze shifts to old Jack. According to the original description, upon learning that Tang San had awakened his twin martial souls, Tang Hao's attitude would immediately undergo a 180-degree turn, and he began to diligently teach the chaotic cloak hammer technique. During that period, Tang San would approach the stove every day to forge iron, which was the best time to start. A stove is equivalent to a source of fire. Respected War Soul Master, I have to trouble you again this time. Old Jack led Tang San closer to the young man and bowed respectfully. I don't have much time, let's start now. Su Yuntao's tone was neither salty nor indifferent, and he bowed slightly in return. Zhu Wu watched quietly until old Jack left with a slightly gloomy expression like the original work. Su Yuntao called on the children present to stand in a row, with Tang San standing at the end. If nothing unexpected happens, you will awaken your innate soul power and become the most beautiful person on the field. So, what about me, who is also a traveler? I had some inexplicable small expectations in my heart. Don't be afraid, close your eyes and feel carefully. In his line of sight, Su Yuntao quickly set up a hexagonal black stone formation on the ground and called for the child at the top right of the line to stand in the middle. Then, he straightened his chest and let out a low drink. Lone Wolf, possessed. A faint blue light lit up from the center of the eyebrows, causing a rapid change in the body. Black hair turns gray and quickly grows, and the same goes for surface hair. The muscles all over the body were curled and bulging, slightly more than before. The pupils turn dark green, and the claws extend from the 10 fingers. Is this the unique soul possession of beast martial souls? Strange physical changes, with 2 soul rings, one white and one yellow, rising from the young man's feet, amazed Zhu Wu. The tone of turning into a wolf stuttered, timely expressing the reaction that one should have at this age. Children, after all, it was Tang San who heard the sound and was focused on looking at Su Yuntao, shaking his head slightly. Turning his head and glancing at Zhu Wu, his emotions were inexplicable. Zhu Wu is undoubtedly a smart child with a precocious mind, which even he has to admit. It is said that when he was still in his infancy, he was carried by his grandfather Zhu Gang to settle in Holy Soul Village. The village chief at the time, Old Jack, saw that the two of them were living on each other, so he agreed. Later, he took the initiative to organize the young people in the village to help build a bamboo house near the bamboo forest at the foot of the northern mountain. The reason for the location was that Zhu Gang mentioned that he knew how to make bamboo weaving, which happened to be a good opportunity for him to use local materials to weave some vessels for sale and earn some small money to support his family. Just like how his father Tang Hao took him to settle by the west river of the village, making it convenient to build a blacksmith shop. In the following years, both families received a lot of care from the village elder Jack and the surrounding villagers. After all, at that time they were still young and had only one elder in their family, all of whom were men. Many things were inconvenient, such as eating when they were still in their infancy. He remembers clearly that he spent some time with Zhu Wu at the wife of the neighboring old Wang family. Looking back now, it's still a bit difficult to talk about. After all, his body is inhabited by an adult soul. However, for the sake of physical growth, I didn't have to worry too much at that time. Later on, his father Tang Hao continued to drink heavily every day, while Zhu Gang grew older and his legs became less agile. In the end, he could only rely on crutches to walk. Zhu Wu also began to take over the family early and share household chores, just like him. What's different is that Zhu Wu and Zhu Gang help to share light tasks such as cooking and cleaning. And I have to do everything by myself. Thinking of my own father makes me feel helpless. The reason why I know these things is because when I first saw Zhu Wu exploring the mountains for a long time without returning, I may have found the necessary poisonous grass, so I had the intention to go to the mountains for a distant view. It has to be said that Zhu Wu is really brave and lucky. At a young age, I dare to explore the mountains alone and often bring back herbs, occasionally poisonous ones. It is said to be a guidebook given by the pharmacy owner, which is convenient for finding medicine. And he, who usually has to take care of his father, really doesn't have time to walk far into the mountains to find medicine. Dad bought all the remaining money at home for alcohol, and he didn't have the money to buy it either. Entering the Zhu Wu family to obtain poisonous herbs is a helpless act. Of course, he only takes poisonous herbs. As a descendant of the Tang clan and receiving education from the sect, he naturally has his own bottom line. Moreover, Zhu Wu, as a child, is not good at manipulating poisonous herbs. One carelessness may harm oneself, and selling it may also harm the innocent. And he wouldn't. Ah! Suddenly, a scream of surprise jumped out of the child standing in the center of the formation. Tang San immediately regained his attention, and the child turned around and ran away in fear, being grabbed by Su Yuntao's shoulder. "Don't move, don't be afraid if you say it. This is my martial soul, the lone wolf," Su Yuntao explained, waiting for the child to calm down before releasing his hand. Then, with both hands quickly shooting, 6 faint green lights burst out from the palm of the hand, injecting all into the black stones on the ground. The sickle lacks soul power, and you cannot become a soul master. The awakening ceremony of the first child was quickly completed. Then comes the second and third. No ho, no soul power fecal fork, no soul power. No one possesses soul power. The children returned disappointed one by one, and soon it was Zhu Wu's turn. Taking a deep breath, Zhu Wu quickly walked into the center of the stone formation, and then saw Su Yuntao, whose face had become slightly pale, clapping his hands and quickly injecting a faint green light into the 6 black stones on the ground. In the next moment, strands of gold emanated from the stones, forming a layer of pale golden light that enveloped the body. Immediately, a little golden light drifted out from the surrounding light shield and penetrated into the body one after another, bringing warmth and comfort. "It's so comfortable," Zhu Wu felt as if something inside his body was being pulled, very warm. Soul power. Combined with the description in the original work, I had a guess in my heart and immediately focused on feeling it. Quickly, under the traction of this warmth, I felt something suddenly break inside my body. All the warm breath rushed towards the palm of his right hand at the same time, completely subconsciously. Zhu Wu raised his right hand. It's a touch of white that catches the eye. Milk white. I couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. In the line of sight, there is a silkworm, with a snow-white body and thick chopstick tips. It is 4 centimeters long and is suspended in a bow shape. This is not scientific. Zhu Wu said he was a bit confused. The father's side is a high-quality blue electric Tyrannosaurus rex martial soul, while the mother's side is an ordinary silkworm martial soul. How can the offspring born awaken the weaker side's martial soul? In theory, shouldn't it be awakening a relatively powerful martial soul? Also, isn't my inexplicable perception of herbs derived from martial souls? He used to think that his martial soul should not be simple. But is this a malignant mutation that has degenerated? I couldn't help but think of Yu Xiaojiang. It's another useless martial soul, Su Yuntao said in a slightly helpless voice. Come on, let's test your soul power first. Zhu Wudong immediately regained his senses, looked up slightly, and said, go back. This was his first attempt, but he didn't understand anything and conveyed the idea of returning to his body to the martial soul. The next second, a sense of familiarity came to my mind, and the white silkworm in my palm moved and quickly disappeared. Zhu Wu was taken aback again. If the sensing is not wrong, the warmth just now seems to have been transmitted by the martial soul. What are you waiting for? Su Yuntao frowned slightly in front of him. This chapter lays the groundwork for a bit more nonsense. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Children, are you willing to join the Martial Soul Hall? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Children, are you willing to join the Martial Soul Hall? Oh, Zhu Wu pretended to be ignorant and quickly raised his hand to stick the crystal ball. Then I felt a tremendous suction coming from under my palm, and the warmth in my body seemed to suddenly find an outlet, rushing out of my palm wildly along my arm and into the crystal ball. In the blink of an eye, the crystal ball became bright. Surprisingly, there is level 6 soul power. How could this be? Su Yuntao was shocked. Level 6, the silkworm martial soul that I awakened just now seems to have only 6 sections on its abdomen. After reading the original work, Zhu Wu, who was clear about the division of innate soul power, did not feel much joy because he awakened level 6 soul power. Instead, he was very alert and recalled the previous scene. Just now, Su Yuntao interjected and urged me. He didn't even come and carefully observed, but I still remember the rough outline of the awakened martial soul. Although the martial soul is short, it is close in distance. As is well known, silkworms have 10 normal segments in their abdomen, and 6 segments are clearly not in line with common sense. Does this indicate that my martial soul can only be cultivated to the Soul Emperor? He couldn't help but think of the martial soul of the 7 treasures glass pagoda. The 7th layer expresses that one can only cultivate to the level of Soul Saint. Thinking of this possibility, my heart felt inexplicably heavy. The martial soul has a bottleneck in cultivation, which is obviously not good news. Big brother, is level 6 very high? He withdrew his emotions, scratched his head, and pretended not to understand and asked. Su Yuntao finally regained his senses and looked at Zhu Wu with a regretful nod on his face. Very high, in my impression, there are very few people who awaken their soul power in the silkworm martial soul. Even if awakened, their innate soul power will not exceed level 1. In the towns around our nodding city, the last one to awaken level 1 soul power was 20 years ago. That's a very beautiful girl, and I even attended nodding college with her. I only hate when I was still young and had a simple mind, not even chasing after me. Not to mention, the child in front of me looks quite similar to her. A glimmer of memories flashed in my eyes, and then I gently shook my head. Why am I telling a child these things? Oh, it's a pity, it's really a pity. It's actually one of the most useless beast martial souls. It would be great if it were martial souls like praying mantis and wasps that have a certain level of attack. In that case, I can do it too. With a sigh, his face turned serious and he said. Children, are you willing to join the martial soul hall? Although the martial soul is a bit useless, it still has level 6 innate soul power. Ah! Zhu Wu was also taken aback when suddenly asked, and then shook his head. Big brother, I'm afraid this won't work. When I went to Nodding City before, I heard people say that joining the martial soul hall required sending children to faraway places for school. My grandfather and I are the only 2 in my family now, and he is 71 years old and has limited mobility. I have to come back frequently to take care of him. So, should we include the placement of family members? If possible, in his opinion, joining the Martial Soul Hall would be a good choice. Anyway, what awakens is not the blue electric Tyrannosaurus Rex soul, it's not very eye-catching. As long as you don't indulge in extravagance, you can definitely get to the grand finale. Of course, as a traveler, the martial soul is highly likely to have flaws, and it is impossible not to cause trouble. This is forcing him to go collect fairy grass. Well, that's it. Su Yuntao's gaze softened a bit. Since that's the case, I don't insist. You can go to Notting College as a work student first. If you want to join the Soul Hall in the future, you can always come to the Soul Hall branch of Notting City to find me. Thank you, big brother. Zhu Wu nodded repeatedly. Speaking of this, a flash of inspiration flashed in my mind and I asked, Big brother, can I ask which village and what is the name of the beautiful big sister who awakened her silkworm martial soul and still has level 1 soul power? What soul beast is her first soul ring from? What I awakened was also the silkworm martial soul, I want to refer to it. You're actually smart. Su Yuntao's eyes showed a hint of surprise, instinctively thinking that the child in front of him was speculating that this so-called beautiful big sister was also a steward of the Martial Soul Hall, just like him. As an acquaintance, he must know how to cultivate the silkworm martial soul. Her name is Bai Jiner, and she lives in Sangshu village, north of Notting City. The first soul ring comes from a 10-year-old spider, and the soul skill she produces is called spitting silk. The effect is to spit out spider silk from her mouth, at a distance of 10 meters. Su Yuntao explained in detail, then her eyes darkened and she sighed. However, as far as I know, Bai passed away 6 years ago due to difficult childbirth, which is also the reason why I can tell you this now. Children, remember not to casually ask others' soul skills when going out in the future. This is a major taboo in the Soul Master world. Difficult childbirth, the blue electric Tyrannosaurus Rex family is indeed a good means. Zhu Wu's heart sank, his face remained calm, and he nodded slightly. Thank you, big brother. I have taken note of it. Alright, you go to the side first. I should help the others awaken now, Su Yuntao said. Zhu Wu bowed slightly and quickly walked out of the stone formation. Soul Rings, Soul Skills, and Tang San, who was standing at the end of the team listening, were quite interesting and thought-provoking. The awakening ceremony continues. Not long after, Su Yuntao exclaimed inside the room, "Oh my goodness, it's innate soul power." Uncle, what is innate soul power? Tang San couldn't help but ask. Su Yuntao regained his composure and began to explain. Zhu Wu listened quietly, and in his leisure time, his emotions couldn't help but drift. In the realm of awakenable talents, the top-level Life Series Martial Soul Blue Silver Emperor, whose quality is no less than that of the Xuantian Hammer, was trained as an ordinary blue silver grass by the theoretical master, Yu Shaojiang, who did not even know the conditions for the birth of twin martial souls. Absorbing animal-type soul rings and adding poison attributes, the entire process did not poison anyone, relying solely on the power of the 8 spider spear poison. Binding people has also been repeatedly unsuccessful, being broken by Yu Tianheng, Feng Xiaotian, and Evil Moon. When encountering top talents, they pull their hips, but if they cannot defeat them, they use the soul-free ring Xuantian Hammer, and cannot rely on past life techniques and hidden weapons. If it weren't for the Immortal Grass first and the awakening of the bloodline and the second evolution of the martial soul, the blue-silver grass martial soul would probably have been truly useless. Oh, it's about the same if it's not used, I haven't used it since. Completely reduced to a tool for assisting the transition of Xuantian Hammer martial souls and facilitating the addition of high-level soul rings to Xuantian Hammer martial souls. Well, I haven't used the Xuantian Hammer much either. The artifact is in hand, what kind of martial soul do you need? I can have everything I have now because I have gone through hardships on my own. It's all thanks to cheating, okay? However, cheating is really delicious, and I also want to cheat. So, what are the essential systems for travelers? System, please wipe your eyes. There's a handsome guy waiting for you to get on here. The system didn't select me, it must be a problem with its vision. I secretly thought to myself. In his thoughts, Su Yuntao had already picked up his package and walked towards the door, and Zhu Wudong immediately came to his senses to follow. The father's side is a high-quality blue electric Tyrannosaurus Rex martial soul, but what awakens is a noticeably worse mother side silkworm martial soul, which is clearly a kind of degeneration. But his innate soul power was at level 6, which really surprised him. I just want to go home as soon as possible and explore more carefully. Master, how are you doing? Just as he walked out of the door, old Jack approached with a nervous expression on his face. There are actually 2, it's just a pity, Su Yuntao sighed. This year, out of the 9 children in your village, 2 have soul power, 1 at level 6 and 1 with innate full soul power. However, their martial souls are ordinary silkworms and blue-silver grass. I believe you also understand what these 2 types of martial souls represent. Old Jack widened his eyes. Then Su Yuntao raised his hand and handed over 2 certificates filled out inside the house. Old Jack, this is the proof for the 2 children. Please keep it. Also, there was originally only 1 working student quota in your village, but I promised in advance that this child named Zhu Wu would go to Notting College as a working student. I didn't expect that the child's martial soul named Tang San would also awaken his soul power, and he was a blue-silver grass martial soul with innate full soul power. This is my fault, so I have decided to give your village an additional quota for working students this time. Anyway, after walking 6 villages ahead, I haven't awakened a soul with soul power. It's okay to even have 1 here. And, with a level 6 soul power and an innate full soul power, I believe that even if I report it to the head of Mathiano, he won't blame me. I thought to myself. Thank you, Master. Old Jack quickly bowed and thanked. Also, Master. Looking up at Su Yuntao, he asked, are these 2 children really unable to cultivate their martial souls? Since they have soul power, they can definitely be cultivated, Su Yuntao sighed. However, as far as I know, no one has ever cultivated these 2 types of martial souls to the level of a great soul master or above, and there is no reference for their evolution direction or achievements in the future. In addition, these 2 types of martial souls do not have any outstanding abilities, as you know. Therefore, even becoming a soul master is probably useless as a useless soul master. Oh, it's really a pity. Shaking his head with regret, he continued, alright, I still have to go to the next village, so I'll leave first. After speaking, he strode towards the outside of the village. Ah! Old Jack couldn't help but sigh as he watched the figure leave. Grandpa Jack, if there's nothing else, I'll go back first, said Zhu Wu, who had already walked up to old Jack. I want to go home quickly to study martial souls, I'm in a hurry. Old Jack turned around and scanned while smiling, Xiao Wu, Xiao San, don't think too much. Having soul power is better than not having soul power, especially since your innate soul power is still so high, you will definitely become a soul master in the future. This is the dream of countless people on the mainland. When you enter the academy, you must study hard and strive to become a true soul master as soon as possible. The village will be proud of you. Grandpa Jack, I will definitely work hard, Zhu Wu replied first. Grandpa Jack, I need to go back and ask Dad about this first, Tang San continued. When old Jack Tun thought of Tang Hao's usual actions, he couldn't help but frown and nodded slightly. Grandpa, let's go home with you. It's a good time to talk to your dad about this. As he spoke, he turned to look at Zhu Wu and said, Xiao Wu, your grandfather will come over later. The proof of the martial soul hall will be left with Grandpa for now. When the college starts, Grandpa will personally send you over. Okay, Zhu Wu nodded. Goodbye Grandpa Jack. After finishing, he turned around and ran towards home. Grandpa Jack, what is a soul ring? And how should I obtain a soul ring? Tang San's voice suddenly came in. It can only be said that the protagonist's martial soul is very impressive, not just a useless start, but also invincible and arrogant in the end. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. I go, my martial soul will transform. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. I go, my martial soul will transform. At the foot of the mountain in the north of the village, there is a bamboo house. After congratulating Grandpa Zhu Gang, Zhu Wu quickly ran into the bedroom under the pretext of studying martial souls and walked straight to the wooden table to sit down. Without any hesitation, he quickly raised his right hand and spread it out in front of him. With a thought, he summoned his martial soul. The white light flickered slightly, and the white silkworm appeared. Zhu Wu leaned slightly and observed closely. The chubby white silkworm lay in the palm of his hand, with its upper body tilted back and its small forelimbs swaying lightly. An inexplicable sense of familiarity once again entered Zhu Wu's mind. You can move on your own, this is a detached martial soul. Zhu Wu was surprised and some kind of speculation arose. Little one, you go back first, he said, with a thought in his heart, and he put his martial soul into his body before getting up. Quickly walk to the empty space in the middle of the bedroom, spread your feet apart, and put on a good posture to practice Vajra. Quickly, as the movement unfolds, a warm current can be clearly felt flowing through the body, flowing through the whole body in a specific route. Be calm and composed, practicing while feeling. So, is the introduction online about the diamond longevity skill that uses external energy to induce internal energy, while internal energy drives external energy. In this world, practicing the diamond longevity skill and longevity skill movements can drive the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the body, and then transform it into the soul power cultivated by soul masters. So, my martial soul has indeed degenerated. It should have been like Yu Xiaojiang, only able to awaken 0.5 levels of innate soul power. But because I persist in practicing diamond longevity skill every day, I have accumulated some soul power in my body, which is why I have 6 levels of innate soul power. Damn it! I suddenly felt like slapping myself twice. Although he practices Vajra longevity skill every day, the time he practices is too short. Previously, he only practiced it as a health exercise. If he practices for a longer time every day, does it mean that he can also awaken his innate full soul power like Tang San? So, these are actually 2 true martial arts. Who could have imagined this? Even though the biggest thing hanging from him after crossing the river was on him, he didn't know. Mushroom, blue skinny. With this feeling of depression, Zhu Wu practiced Vajra Gong once and then practiced Changshu Gong again. Before, when I didn't awaken my martial soul, I couldn't sense anything. Now that I awaken my martial soul, not only can I sense soul power, but the changes in my body during practicing actions have also become clearer. I have truly mastered the cultivation rules of this world. Is this the result of the fusion of martial arts and soul power, just like Tang San's Xuantian Gong? When practicing Vajra Gong, there is a warm flow flowing through the body, while Changshu Gong is a bit refreshing, and the brain has become much clearer. Zhu Wu kept recalling and comparing. It is obvious that after aligning with the laws of heaven and earth or the energy of heaven and earth in this world, Vajra Gong and Changshu Gong have become 2 different martial arts that can be used to cultivate soul power, and their effects are different. However, they can be practiced simultaneously, otherwise I would have had trouble practicing them before. Thinking like this, stop moving. Unfortunately, I am currently unable to achieve inner vision. Otherwise, I could study carefully the differences in the flow of soul power in my body and their respective effects when practicing these 2 techniques. If I could figure them out, I have a premonition that I would have 2 different soul power operation routes that have different effects but can also be practiced simultaneously. This also means that I can achieve the cultivation effect by actively operating my soul power in my body, and the efficiency is higher. In his opinion, using physical movements to drive the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is definitely not as effective as actively using the soul power in the body to cultivate. This is the difference between passive and active. According to previous online introductions, Vajra Gong is suitable for practicing when the sun has just risen in the morning, and Changsho Gong is suitable for practicing when the moon is shining brightly in the quiet of the night. In the past few days, there has been no moon at night, so it seems that we can wait a little longer. We can carefully compare this so-called best practice time with other times of practice when we have the opportunity later. With this in mind, he strode towards the wooden table, sat down, and summoned his martial soul again. The white light shone brightly, and the silkworm martial soul reappeared in the palm of his hand, lifted by Zhu Wu and placed in front of him for observation. There's no way, the little one is too small to see clearly without getting close. Is this really a silkworm? Zhu Wu couldn't help but murmur as he stared closely at the little guy's forehead. There is actually a small inverted triangular scale at the center of the little guy's eyebrows, which is still colorful, but the maximum diameter is not as wide as rapeseed. If you don't look closely, you really can't notice it. Looking down, the edges of the pores on both sides are silver in color, completely different from the black color of ordinary silkworms. At the next moment, the pupils slightly open. I'll go, this leg has claws. Zhu Wu was secretly surprised. Upon closer inspection, for sharp claws grew on both sides of the short legs, which looked very similar to the water bear insect claws in his impression. So, what exactly is this? A hybrid breed of dragon and silkworm couldn't help but show a strange expression. Little one, spit out some silk to take a look, said Zhang Mouth. As a detached martial soul or a silkworm, should I be born with the ability to spin silk? Just like how Luo Sanpao can fart. As a martial soul, I am one with Zhu Wu, and the little one understands. Shake your head to indicate that you don't know. Zhu Wu fell silent. To spit out a thread, he had to rely on absorbing soul rings to obtain it, and he felt that this setting was very unreasonable. Seemingly sensing the owner's low mood, the little one's head shook, and the scales on his eyebrows suddenly fainted and died with colorful radiance, flickering away. The next second, the delicate body's white light surged, and Zhu Wu instinctively closed his eyes to cover them. Then he felt his fingers being squeezed by a huge force and couldn't help but let go. After blinking, the white light disappeared between his fingers, and Zhu Wu finally put down his hand and looked at the table. Woo woof woof. A dog was barking. Zhu Wu was shocked. The dog sitting on the table was just like his dead rhubarb. I'll go, my martial soul will transform. So, is it okay for a cat ear girl or a rabbit girl? Alternatively, Qianrengshu, Bibi Dong, Posisi, Ning Rongrong, Zhu Zhuqing, Zhu Zhuyun, Tang Yuehua, Ayin, and Yinlong Wanghihi are also good for I care. Then I realized that my soul power was rapidly flowing away, and my body was about to be emptied. Obviously, this transformation ability consumes a lot of soul power. Little one, quickly change back. Zhu Wu quickly shouted out. Then I saw a flash of white light on the yellow dog's body, transforming back into a small white silkworm, obediently lying on the table. Zhu Wu immediately felt that the speed of soul power consumption in his body became extremely slow, almost negligible compared to just now. Is it related to body size? The larger the size, the more soul power is consumed. I couldn't help but guess. Reaching out his hand, he picked up his martial soul and placed it back in his palm. He stared blankly and tentatively asked, "Do you have any other abilities?" People are always dissatisfied, and he is no exception. The little one nodded repeatedly, conveying a happy mood to Zhu Wu, looking very useful to me. Then, bending down his upper body, he pressed his head close to Zhu Wu's palm, and the colorful scales on his eyebrows once again shone a faint halo. Zhu Wu suddenly felt a large amount of information forcefully inserted into his mind, and it surged wildly. However, I didn't feel any discomfort, as if this information came from my bloodline and I was just reading it in a timely manner. This. His mouth opened slightly, surprised. Lie down, you're amazing. I couldn't help but shout out. Is this the true strength of detached martial souls? The information in his mind really shocked him. His martial soul, like a real soul beast, possesses innate abilities and more than one. Moreover, these abilities differ slightly from some aspects of the soul beasts that appear in the sequel, and are mostly identical. One of them is illusory. His martial soul can be transformed into any visible creature, including breath. Of course, you don't have to guess, but the shape is exactly the same as the breath, and the most basic abilities, such as changing birds, can fly, and so can the singing. Don't think about soul skills or anything else. However, even so, there is still a lot of room for practice. For example, intimidation. If it can become a 100,000-year-old spirit beast with the same breath, the low-level spirit beast can't scare urine on the spot. Well, the initial soul power should not be able to support it. What about reaching the realm? Besides, martial souls can also absorb soul ring evolution. If they can absorb suitable soul rings, this ability may even go further. Oscar's ability to replicate mirror intestines is not bad. The future is promising. The second is to explore treasures. As the name suggests, to explore treasures. With keen perception, one can perceive the existence of natural resources and treasures within a certain range. Because of this keen perception, it also possesses the ability to predict danger to a certain extent. My strange ability to sense herbs really comes from my martial soul, Zhu Wu thought to himself. The third, storage. There is a storage space inside each segment of the body, which can be used to store natural resources and treasures. Currently, the diameter of each segment is less than half a meter. The fourth, cultivation. The emitted breath has the effect of nourishing natural resources and treasures, including fresh natural resources and treasures stored in the internal space. That is to say, the storage space of his martial soul can store living creatures. However, living organisms are limited to plants. This is also the reason why martial souls are called treasure beasts. According to the information transmitted by the martial soul, his martial soul is called a treasure hunting beast, which is only one word away from the parasitic treasure hunting beast on the dragon god that appears in the sequel. He has every reason to believe that these two come from the same race, with only slight differences in individual abilities and different responsibilities. It is reported that treasure hunting beasts, as parasites on the body of the dragon god, are nurtured by the dragon god and endowed with certain abilities and strong divine consciousness. Therefore, they have a sensitive perception of any heavenly and earthly treasures within a certain range, and their emitted breath has a ripening effect on the heavenly and earthly treasures. In addition, it has a powerful ability to transform into any creature it has seen and possesses certain abilities of that creature. It can perform up to 30% of its level, and the most powerful creature in the clan has a level 1 divine power. Originally responsible for managing the medicine garden in the divine realm, but later suffered almost all casualties in the divine realm battle, with only a small number remaining. It seems that the spatial gods and their sisters in the divine realm are also a type of dragon parasite. The spatial insect, with spatial attributes, is responsible for stabilizing the spatial elements in the divine realm. My treasure beast also has certain spatial attributes, but it has derived storage capabilities. It seems that it is responsible for cultivating, storing, and transporting medicinal herbs. Therefore, it is the 5 scumbags who were nurtured by the dragon god to manage logistics. Thinking of this, Zhu Wu fell silent. The good news is that his martial soul is not a silkworm at all, but a parasite on the dragon god. As a parasite, it's normal to consume the host's blood and nutrients, right? It is also nurtured by the dragon god itself, so it is normal to have some dragon god blood in the body, right? The scales of the dragon god are colorful, and the part between his martial soul eyebrows is also colorful. Isn't this just a coincidence? It can also explain exactly where the bloodline of the blue electric Tyrannosaurus rex family went in his body, so this should be considered a super return of bloodline, right? After all, it is linked to the dragon god. The bad news is, it's a logistics unit. My mentality is a bit shattered. After a while, I straightened my mind and continued to speculate. How strong is the dragon god's bloodline? Even if it's only a very thin trace, it's not something that a human can bear. So, I encountered the same problem as Yu Xiaojiang back then, mutated, and also degraded. Fortunately, I practiced a technique and accumulated a certain amount of soul power or energy in my body, which provided nourishment for the awakened martial soul and did not completely degrade. As a detached martial soul, like soul beasts, it possesses racial talent and has been preserved, but it has also been stuck in the cultivation limit due to incomplete mutation and evolution. Of course, this is just a small issue. After all, the treasure-hunting beast clan can evolve by devouring heavenly and earthly treasures, and my treasure-hunting beast should also be able to do so. And heavenly and earthly treasures are visible in the eyes of both the ice and fire. There are still quite a few, and they are all top-notch. Perhaps Yu Xiaojiang could have done it too, Zhu Wu suddenly thought. As an ex-vivo martial soul, Yu Xiaojiang's martial soul, Luo Sanpao, can also eat. However, what Yu Xiaojiang fed was not Tian Kai Dibao, but radish. If Yu Xiaojiang's martial soul has not completely degenerated or recovered through postnatal repair, both are detached martial souls, and possess top-level dragon bloodline such as the Golden Holy Dragon, they may also have the same innate talent and ability as me, like a true soul beast. In the original work, Yu Xiaojiang, along with Lu Erlong and Frand, formed a martial soul fusion technique. However, the core and leader were Yu Xiaojiang, who had the lowest cultivation level. Luo Sanpao became the Golden Holy Dragon. He has reason to suspect that the Golden Holy Dragon is the final evolutionary form of Yu Xiaojiang's Luo Sanpao martial soul. Fortunately, I learned the diamond longevity skill in my past life. At this moment, Zhu Wu felt immensely grateful in his heart. If it weren't for learning the diamond longevity skill, his martial soul finger might have degenerated into a real silkworm. And now, it's just a few sections less than the perfect body. There's still hope. Even green caterpillars can evolve into split-air seats. My martial soul is a parasite, why can't it evolve into a dragon god? I think it's okay. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Blue Silver Grass, Dogs Don't Eat It. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Blue Silver Grass, Dogs Don't Eat It. My martial soul should be the main spiritual attribute, with a hint of spatial attribute. The spatial attribute is undoubtedly extremely impressive, but where should I find a soul beast with spatial attributes? The dark demon evil god tiger seems to have the chance to find and kill this one in the future. Thinking of this, Zhu Wu was very distressed. Due to limited abilities, the first soul ring dragon seed soul beast may be difficult, let alone spiritual or spatial attributes. It's really not possible, so we can only lower the requirements first and try to ensure it fits the main spiritual attribute as much as possible. However, it's also difficult to find spiritual attribute soul beasts. Especially, my martial soul is too difficult. The potential of spiritual attributes is also good, and Huogua is an example, which can be considered a ready-made reference. How about going to the starry forest then? Will Tianmeng Ice Silkworm take the initiative to throw? The question is there any luck? I'm afraid I'll just give it a try and pass away, I'm very likely to die. Let's take a step first and take a look. Helplessly shaking his head, he lowered his head to look at the martial soul, and Zhu Wu sighed inwardly. Ice and fire eyes are undoubtedly a good place, but the prerequisite is that they can be safely touched. And now he can't do it at all. Leaving aside the level of Dugubo, the bipolar energy inside is beyond his current capacity. As for the starry forest, as the largest primitive forest on the mainland, there must be many natural resources and treasures inside. However, accompanied by endless crises. After all, the starry forest is still the largest gathering place for soul beasts on this continent, with thousands of years on the periphery. Oh, I don't want to. Shaking my head again, what I need to do now is to learn about soul beasts and soul masters, and then upgrade to level 10. Let's talk about the rest. Little guy, I'll call you Xiao Bai in the future, he said as he quickly walked out of the room holding his martial soul. Whether the martial soul can grow and evolve through eating, we need to try. Come to the backyard, pull out a blue silver grass from a corner and deliver it to the martial soul, nodding slightly. Xiao Bai, have a meal. Xiao Bai's head immediately shook left and right, conveying a sense of disgust to Zhu Wu, as if speaking. Blue silver grass, even dogs don't eat it. Is it because the ordinary blue silver grass has no cultivation, or is it lacking in medicinal power? Zhu Wu thought to himself, glancing at the nearby medicine garden, throwing away the blue silver grass in his hand, and strode closer. Bowing down, he painfully pulled out the Polygonum multiflorum that had been raised for a long time and prepared to be eaten by his wife in the future, and presented it to Xiao Bai. Crunching, crunching. Little Bai's head leaned closer and began to nibble on it. I have a premonition that what I am awakening to is not a treasure beast, but a gold-devouring beast that is picky about food. Additionally, judging from this situation, Xiao Bai cannot directly absorb heavenly and earthly treasures from his inner space. Zhu Wu's mouth twitched and he strode into the room. After the Chinese New Year, we'll have to go into the mountains to find medicine again. In a low murmur, return to the bedroom and place Polygonum multiflorum and Xiao Bai on the table, quietly observing. Xiao Bai is too young and eats slowly. It takes a while before he bites off a small piece. After a little while, stop eating. Looking up at Zhu Wu, the person behind nodded slightly and happily lowered their head. The colorful scales on their eyebrows flashed, and the big Polygonum multiflorum in front of them disappeared in an instant. So it was collected like this. Zhu Wu raised his eyebrows and then a question came to his mind. By the way, can my detached martial soul be possessed for combat? It seems that the original work, Yu Shaojiang, has never used Luo Sanpao as an attachment before, and it is unclear whether it is due to the inability of detached martial souls or the severe degradation of Yu Shaojiang's martial soul that it cannot be used. We can only wait until we obtain the first soul ring before looking, sighed inwardly, no longer overthinking this question. There are still 3 months left until the start of the college year, during which I need to focus on my cultivation and strive to break through level 10 as soon as possible. As for Xiao Bai's food, it seems that he doesn't have much appetite at the moment. He should be too weak to digest too much medicine. After finishing this Polygonum multiflorum plant, I will search in the mountain again. With Xiao Bai's help now, the difficulty of finding medicine should be even lower. Besides, regarding explosives, Xiao Bai may be able to help. Well, during this period, we need to give Xiao Bai some special training, such as turning into a bird and placing it inside the house. In winter, there are also birds. Yesterday, he heard magpies chirping outside the door. With such thoughts, summon the novice back and continue practicing the technique. In the afternoon, old Jack came over, followed by several strong men. Ao, the pigsty on the side of the courtyard soon sounded a mournful scream. Although Zhu Wu's awakened martial soul has 6 levels of innate soul power, it is recognized as an abandoned martial soul, which is considered a happy event. However, it is somewhat awkward. The village chief, Old Jack, and the villagers also understand. Therefore, after handling the pork, they each came to buy some to show their joy, and after a simple congratulatory gesture, they said goodbye and left. Celebrating at a banquet or something, that's waved. Zhu Wu also enjoyed his leisure and politely bid farewell one by one. Only the Old Jack family, who had the most support, and the Old Wang family, whose wife had breastfed Zhu Wu, were left behind and had dinner before leaving. After dinner, Zhu Wu packed his things and plunged into the bedroom. Xiao Bai, this is the slag outlet of the furnace. You need to fly in and stick things to the dead corner here. Zhu Wu placed the martial soul Xiao Bai on his shoulder and gave a detailed introduction to the clay Tang Hao family forging furnace model placed on the table, patiently guiding him. In theory, sticking the guy to a dead corner of the ventilation vent is more likely to explode. After all, there is a raging charcoal fire below. It can be considered that Tang San is too short in height, and if he detonates in the ventilation duct, the explosion shock wave and gravel attack may pass against his forehead, or Tang San may react quickly and dodge with a slight bow of his head. And if placed in the dead corner of the slag outlet near the waistline, this problem will not occur. For no other reason, the main focus is on a wide enough range of impact. As for adding more piles, there are too many hidden dangers. If the other one or a few did not detonate, the fool would know afterwards that it was human-made. After all, Tang Hao is a titled Douluo, and it's hard to say that he will definitely be killed by the explosion. If he doesn't die, it's not good to be angry and start killing. So, for safety reasons, only one lump can be placed. He plans to wrap it in multiple layers of clay, mixed with hard carbon slag, which may have less power, but the advantage is that it is not easy to leave traces. After all, Tang Hao's blacksmith used soil to build the slag stove, with a carbon slag layer on the bottom layer, and the materials were exactly the same. With the power he had anticipated, the soil skin wrapped around it would definitely turn into powder, making it difficult to distinguish. As for the smell of gunpowder, Tang Hao doesn't understand gunpowder. Of course, it is not realistic to completely eliminate Tang Hao's suspicion that the explosion was artificially created. I hope there won't be any accidents, I thought to myself. I just woke up my martial soul today. Just to be safe, I'll execute it a few days later. With this thought, I continued to guide the novice. Soon, in the dead of night, Zhu Wu began practicing the Changshou Gong movement. I haven't learned the meditation technique used by soul masters yet, and I haven't figured out the path of the technique. For now, I can only rely on practicing movements to practice. 2 hours later, Douluo spirit went to bed to sleep. Having nothing to say all night, I woke up early the next morning to practice Vitra. When I was tired, I rested and helped my grandfather Zhu Gang with household chores. After finishing, continue practicing. After all, there is no such thing as the movements he has learned in this world. To avoid being suspicious when Tang San sees them, he has been practicing in his bedroom for many years. Opening the window and facing the open space, Tang San had nowhere to hide, but he didn't worry about being peeked at. Only the poisonous grass brought back from the mountain every time, he dare not keep it indoors. Without him, I was a bit worried that my grandfather would be awakened by Tang San, who entered the room in the middle of the night, and would be forced to come and kill someone to silence him. It's not surprising that he thinks too much, just because the original work Tang San is really good at finding reasons to kill, and the famous saying of taking death left a deep impression on him. He is not afraid of 10,000, so he is afraid of the unexpected. For the sake of his wealth and life, he feels that being steady is not wrong. Besides, is there a difference between planting herbs indoors or outdoors? Whether it is a fence or a gate, it has always been a defense against gentlemen rather than villains since ancient times. For professional thieves, prevention is definitely impossible. In the evening, continue to deepen the impression on Xiao Bai. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Tang San, your home blows up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Tang San, your home blows up. A few days later, at 3 a.m. Zhu Wu wrapped his feet in rags, walked against the night wind, and finally arrived at the opposite bank of the river 50 meters away from Tang Hao's house. This is the maximum distance that Xiao Bai, as an detached martial soul, can currently move away from him. Xiao Bai, go ahead. Zhu Wu turned his head to his right shoulder and whispered encouragement. To avoid being sensed by Tang Hao's soul power fluctuations, he lightly tapped the small white head that had already transformed into a magpie in advance, flapping its wings and taking off. Tang Hao's residence consists of 3 earthen embryo houses. The blacksmith shop is located on the left near the downstream of the river, and there is a door panel separating the entrance. However, this door panel is not very impressive. Made of multiple wooden boards nailed together, there are various air leaks, and the top is even more prone to large leaks due to uneven height. And this happens to be the entrance for Xiao Bai to enter. The night wind was strong, and the already loose doors and windows trembled and made a sound, just enough to cover up the sound of wings flying. That's also why he chose to come tonight with Xiao Bai. The night was dim, and it was impossible to see clearly from a distance of 50 meters. However, with the sense between Zhu Wu and the martial soul, he could feel Xiao Bai approaching. If only we could share our perspectives, I sighed inwardly, but unfortunately, after trying, it couldn't be achieved. He felt a deep malice towards this world where all abilities of the martial soul needed to be filled with soul rings. These days, he has fully experienced the pain of a flying soul master needing martial souls to acquire flying soul skills in order to fly. The cold wind patted his face, causing some pain. Zhu Wu tightened his collar and waited quietly. On the other side, Xiao Bai had already flown into the forging room and landed at the slag outlet of the furnace. Xiao Bai ran quickly and crawled in. With a gentle flick of her wings, her petite body soared into the air, her sharp claws gripping the rough earth wall, and then her eyebrows aimed at the dead corner, shimmering with colorful light. A large oval-shaped dumpling-shaped clay suddenly pressed against the dead corner, and the surrounding soft soil slowly embedded into the gap. After a while, the pressure on the top of the head decreased and the clay no longer slipped. The little white head immediately lifted up. Poo uses its pointed beak and claws together to compact the middle and edges of the clay one by one, as if building a nest. Time passed by little, until the whole piece of clay was wrapped in a dead corner like a dumpling skin, with the lead wire facing down unobstructed, and it finally landed satisfactorily. Lowering his head, his eyebrows sparkled with colorful light, and he collected the debris one by one into the space, doing a good job of cleaning up the traces. With a thumping sound, the vibrating wings flew out of the forging chamber and flew happily towards Zhu Wu. Xiao Bai, you did a beautiful job. Zhu Wu praised in a low voice, calling back his martial soul, and quickly turned around and ran away. I don't think Tang Hao noticed, but as for the Shura god, he shouldn't be idle and staring at him while the 2 father and son were sleeping, right? Running while thinking. Tang Hao was the capital of slaughter that emerged from the god of killing realm at the age of 28, long before encountering Ian. According to the original description, the realm of killing gods should be a credential for obtaining the qualification for the Shura god examination, and the Shura god uses this method to cast a wide net to select successors. So, it's hard to say that the realm of killing gods attached to Tang Hao's Xuantian hammer martial soul does not have the divine concept of the Shura god. To be honest, after watching the sequel, he suspected that Tang San might be the son of Douluo continent's fortune from the previous era of Huoguo. Just like in the sequel, the divine king Tang San can sense the birth of a son of Qi in Douluo continent, the Shura god must also be able to sense the birth of a son of Qi. Moreover, due to Tang Hao's possession of the god-killing domain, he immediately locked in Tang San and has been following him ever since. Tang Hao has the spirit of the Shura god on his body. Isn't it equivalent to Tang Hao staring at the Shura god? Tang Hao can also serve as a bodyguard. As for the fact that Tang San, the son of Qi Yun, who was pierced by his soul, has taken over the Shura divine knowledge, it is unclear whether he knows it or not. Perhaps we will know later. After all, Tang San has been behaving abnormally since childhood. However, it did not prevent it, because things had already happened, and although the body had changed its soul, the Qi luck had not dissipated. He was still the son of the Qi luck of Douluo continent and could be trained to become the heir to the throne. However, Compared to ruthlessly cutting her daughter's soul and injecting it into the body of the auspicious beast's three-eyed golden dragon, and then arranging her daughter to come into contact with Tang San of Huagua in the lower realm, the Shura god is obviously much more wise. First, use Tang Hao to help Tang San enter the capital of slaughter and obtain the realm of killing gods, and then push the boat to help Tang San pass the sea god assessment. Why do we say, help? Because the deep-sea demon whale king was killed by Tang San through the power of the Shura god. It was precisely through this opportunity that the Shura god forcefully intervened and convinced the sea god to agree to let Tang San inherit his divine position with another martial soul. It's hard to say, Tang San's poisoning on the path of hell was also tacitly approved by the Shura god, with the aim of allowing Tang Chen to deliver the Shura demon sword to Tang San's hands. If it's true, then the Shura god is really a thousand-layered cake. Perhaps Tang San's life has already been planned by the Shura god, regardless of whether he is the true son of Qi Luck. It has to be said that at the beginning of the game, Tang San transformed into a soul beast and came to his doorstep, killed a 1,000-year-old soul beast and lost its external soul bone, sent Immortal Grass to his doorstep, covered by the vast sea and universe, and consecutively sacrificed soul beasts for 10,000 years. It's hard to believe that Tang San is not the son of luck. As both travelers and familiar with the plot, what labor and capital do is the son of luck. Moreover, even thieves like Tang San are chosen, which shows that the Shura god in this world is not very good. With this thought, Zhu Wu quickly disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, in the west of Holy Soul Village. The winter weather is gloomy and cold, and the Chinese New Year is approaching. No one comes to the blacksmith shop to make agricultural tools, and the surrounding rows of adobe houses appear extremely cold. In the distance, Tang San ran back and quickly ran into the kitchen inside the house. He came to the stove and uncovered the lid of the pot. Every day before going up the mountain, he would put rice in a good pot and arrange firewood. When he came back, congee was just cooked. "Dad, it's time to eat." Tang San carefully placed 2 bowls on the table and turned his head to shout softly into the room. Soon, the sound of footsteps came. Tang Hao opened the door curtain and strode out. He came to the table, picked up congee, drank it and walked out of the door. Tang San didn't say anything more. After drinking congee, he simply cleaned up and went out to the forge. Since awakening his twin martial souls, his father Tang Hao has noticeably changed a lot. In the morning, he no longer sleeps in, but personally instructs him on the chaotic cloak hammer technique. Arriving at the forge, my father had indeed ignited the charcoal fire and thrown the pig iron into the furnace. "Today we will continue to forge pig iron," Tang Hao said succinctly. "Yes, Dad." Tang San nodded respectfully and strode to the anvil, picking up a forging hammer and waiting. Not long after, the pig iron was burned red, and Tang Hao skillfully picked it up with iron pliers and placed it on the anvil. Ding ding dang. Tang San swung the forging hammer and began to smash it, with rhythmic tapping sounds constantly ringing. On the other hand, as the top coal is fully burned, more and more sparks carrying waste residue fall into the slag outlet along the cracks. The sound of knocking outside is incessant, and the accumulation of internal waste is increasing. The uncooled waste falls and collides, sparking continuously and splashing higher as the bottom waste piles up. Until half an hour later, with a thud, a cluster of sparks surged into the top corner, igniting the exposed wires. The lead wire is very thin, the sound of ignition is very small, and the smoke is also small, completely covered by the burning carbon fire above. After blinking, without any warning. Bang! A loud bang suddenly rang out in the forging room, and a terrifying wave erupted. The entire earthen forging platform was lifted from the bottom, with a large amount of soil and bricks mixed with calcined bright red coal and hot sparks shooting in all directions. Xiao San. Tang Hao reacted quickly and slapped Tang San, who was holding the forging hammer high, with the intention of using soul power to counteract and disperse the shockwave and the blasted debris. On the other hand, Tang San also reacted quickly and immediately used a hammer to block his head and chest. I am also aware that there is still a chance of survival if hit in the lower body, and if hit in the head or heart, the probability of death will greatly increase. Tang Hao's reaction was indeed fast, and the soul power captured in emergency shots was also fast, but no matter what, it was no faster than the first round of shock wave generated by an unprepared explosion. Without any suspense, Tang San was instantly knocked away. The forging hammer that was placed in front of the chest made a muffled sound when it hit the chest. The right arm that held the forging hammer also twisted due to the impact, and the joints made a creaking sound, indicating that it was a fracture. The other parts of the body were hit by debris and sparks, making a muffled sound. The nearby Tang Hao, whose first thought was to save Tang San, was also shaken back by the impact of the sudden explosion, and his body was hit by gravel one after another. Time was too rushed, he didn't even have time to activate his martial soul, so he naturally couldn't unleash his defensive soul skills. Bang Rumble was hit by the lifted gravel on the surrounding walls, and the already weak earthen walls inevitably collapsed. Poo. The flames rising upward splashed sparks onto the surrounding combustibles, instantly igniting a raging fire. Worried about his son's stability, Tang Hao did not hesitate at all and used his soul power to accelerate towards Tang San. The carbon fire splashing inside the house caused a second explosion, but its power was completely incomparable to the previous explosion. Thunder. Everything was just between lightning and fire. The surrounding villagers were awakened by the sound of explosions and hurriedly went out to check. Then they saw the thick smoke rising above Tang Hao's house. Tang Hao's house is in the water. Go and put out the fire quickly. Screams of surprise echoed one after another. Tang San, your house is bombed. Zhu Wu, who was far away from his home in the north of the village, also heard the sound and instinctively turned his head. Without much hesitation, he greeted his grandfather Zhu Gang and hurried out to watch the excitement. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Can only start by wronging the third party. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 can only start by wronging the third party. On the other side. Tang Hao found Tang San from the gravel outside the door. Chest sunken, right arm twisted and fractured, clothes and other areas tattered, blood everywhere. With a sweep of his gaze, Tang Hao was almost covered in wounds from crushed stones and charcoal, covering his lower body and limbs, even with bloodstains on his lower body. He looked both anxious, angry, and angry. But at this moment, there was no time to think much, and he didn't care about his injuries. He quickly picked up Tang San, turned around to look at the burning house, and quickly ran to the other side of the river. I need a room and a basin of hot water, Tang Hao said with a gloomy expression as he faced his neighbor running to put out the fire. It's important to save the child, hurry up, come into my house first. The nearest neighbor to Tang Hao's house responded urgently and quickly turned around to lead the way. Tang Hao followed quickly into the room. What else are you looking at? Put out the fire quickly. The other villagers rushed into the house to put out the fire, moving things. Is this a furnace explosion? Later, old Jack and his family joined the rescue work. Young children were ordered to only observe from afar and not approach, including Zhu Wu. I didn't expect it to be quite powerful, after all, it's a adobe house with low strength. Looking up, half of the wall near the blacksmith shop on the left side of the main house had collapsed. I don't know what Tang San is doing now. As a latecomer, he also learned that Tang Hao was carrying Tang San, who was covered in blood, into his neighbor's house. After some thought, he turned his head and ran towards his neighbor's house. Entering the room, several women stood outside the wooden bedroom door. As they approached and looked through the crack in the door, Tang San had already passed out and was lying quietly on the bed, covered in blood stains. Tang Hao, who was also covered in blood, sat by the bed with a gloomy face, holding a white cloth in his hand and a basin of hot water under his feet. Obviously, this is cleaning Tang San's wound. Yeah, this is not dead. Zhu Wu is unable to roast. Is Tang San really the son of Qi Yun? Ah, it's also strange that the conditions are limited. After all, the furnace is mainly made of adobe bricks, and its hardness is average. It shatters easily when exploded. My gunpowder is the same, wrapped in clay shell. If the building material of the furnace is red bricks or something, and the gunpowder shell is also replaced, perhaps the result will be different. Sigh inwardly and gaze down. His eyebrows couldn't help but rise. It seems like he injured his egg, no wonder Tang Hao's face is so ugly. His right wrist is swollen like this, obviously a fracture, and I don't know if it will affect his future use of technique-type hidden weapons. Quickly, in his sight, Tang Hao, with his back to the bed, shook his hands and picked up a small lump, throwing it into the nearby water basin. As a practical veterinarian who had once cut countless animal eggs, Zhu Wu did not feel much discomfort, but silently turned around and walked out of the door. Tang San, in the future, the title of Lonely Testicular Hero belongs to you, he said in his heart as he walked. After this battle, Tang Hao is afraid that he will keep an eye on Tang San, and it may be difficult to take action again. However, achieving such success now is also a great revenge. Besides, the days are still long, and there are still opportunities in the future. On the other side, in Tang San's bedroom, old Jack's son Jerry fell silent. He found Zhu Wu's lost herb under Tang San's bed. Although he didn't understand it, it was exactly the same as Zhu Wu's original description. Even if there is only half left and it has dried up, it can still be seen that it should be the plant that Zhu Wu lost in the beginning. So, the thing was stolen by Tang San. At the moment when Tang San has awakened his innate full soul power and will become a soul master in the future, he has thought a lot. Although I dislike Tang Hao, I also dislike Tang San being a thief at a young age. But it has to be admitted that their family cannot afford to provoke soul masters. Even if one possesses a useless martial soul, a soul master is ultimately a soul master. After a brief ideological struggle, he silently sent the box back to the bottom of the bed. This matter can be discussed privately, but it must not be exposed in public. Moreover, Tang San has also been punished this time, he thought as he strode out of the door. This room has not been affected, and the fire outside has been controlled. Let's not touch the things inside. Call out to the surrounding villagers and run out to other places to move things. Alright, let's all disperse. Old Jack waved to the surrounding melon-eating crowd to leave. Upon seeing this, Zhu Wu glanced at the Tang Hao family and followed the large army. Based on the on-site situation, Tang Hao clearly chose to save people as soon as possible, rather than searching for evidence. Nowadays, the accident site has been hit by a large fire, and the surrounding villagers have gone through a lot of firefighting and debris removal work, which is completely unrecognizable. The smoke from the gunpowder explosion has long dissipated, and Tang Hao, who doesn't understand gunpowder, may find it difficult to find artificial evidence. This is obviously good news. Feeling happy in returning home, continue with daily life. After a long time, Tang Hao wrapped Tang San into a big zongzi with white cloth in his neighbor's house in the west of the village. Hey, Tang Hao, take good care of the mistress. I will have someone help rebuild the house, old Jack comforted. Tang Hao nodded slightly and looked down at Tang San's pale face, lost in thought. Do you want to retrieve eye and soul bone for the third party to absorb? This way, it can also heal faster. Due to his son Tang San's current injury, it is difficult to find a healing soul master at this time. He only needs medication for treatment, so he may have to lie down for at least 2 months to recover. Can allow my son to absorb the blue silver emperor soul bone now, which will affect many things in the future. Registering as a soul master requires testing one's soul power. Subsequent registrations for intermediate and advanced colleges require testing one's soul power, as well as registration for major soul battles and soul master competitions. He does not believe that his third child has the ability to conceal it. The innate full soul power of the blue-silver grass martial soul may not be too eye-catching, as can be seen from the fact that the deacon did not invite his son to join the martial soul hall in the beginning. But if it exceeds level 10, absorbing soul bones can enhance soul power, and excess soul power enhancement will be displayed after absorbing soul rings. If the soul power increases too much after absorbing the first soul ring, it will definitely attract attention. If the subsequent soul power exceeds that of peers, it will also attract attention. Especially, it attracted the attention of the martial soul hall. In this way, it becomes difficult to conduct the experience of entering the world, and the subsequent soul master competition cannot be participated in. And unable to enter the world for training, unstable in nature, how can one pass the path of hell in the future? Usually, he can secretly bless, but there are some things that he ultimately needs to personally experience. To grow into a strong generation, this is a necessary process that must be experienced. Too much intervention and excessive protection will only have the opposite effect. Moreover, soul rings have a transformative effect on the body. One's own son is born with full soul power, young, and has good body recovery ability. After absorbing the first soul ring, the body can recover to its peak without leaving any hidden dangers. Except for what has already been cut off, we can only compromise the third party first. Compared to delaying the recovery of his injury, he is more worried about affecting his future plans for his son. Seeing Tang Hao's cold attitude, old Jack didn't get angry either. He shook his head slightly, supported his crutch, and turned to leave. In the afternoon, seeing that Tang San was no longer worried about his life, Tang Hao returned to his own blacksmith shop and carefully investigated. Someone is at home during the day and the door is tightly closed at night. If someone moves the door in, their perceptual ability can definitely sense it. This indicates that no one has entered his house these days. As for other traces, when the villagers rushed to put out the fire, some of them had already been damaged. The slag outlet at the center of the explosion had turned into debris, mixed with the surrounding burning marks, making it pitch black. I searched several times without any clue. All the evidence suggests that this was not an artificial explosion, and he does not believe that the villagers of this small village have such abilities. As for the discovery of his trace in the martial soul hall, if it were true, it would not be just an explosion, but a large army surrounding and killing him. Is it really just an accident? The overheating of the carbon fire caused the furnace to explode. This kind of thing happened at the blacksmith's shop not without precedent, it was just a personal experience, and it was the first time he had experienced it. The key is to cause his only child to suffer serious injuries and almost end up with no offspring. Just missing one may not result in losing fertility, but ultimately it will have some impact, which is not a good thing. As soon as Tang Hao thought about the previous danger and the subsequent treatment process, he felt a wave of fear and his face was uncertain. It took him a while to stabilize and accept that this was likely an accident. At the same time, make a decision inwardly, and be sure to carefully select materials when rebuilding the furnace and using coal and charcoal in daily life to avoid accidents from happening again. Today's experience, he really doesn't want to encounter it again. Take a deep breath to stabilize your emotions, stabilize your internal injuries, and turn around to walk towards your neighbor's house. Dad, I found Xiaowu's lost herb under Tang San's bed. Jerry whispered to old Jack's house. Old Jack was taken aback for a moment, then his face turned ugly and fell into silence. After a while, he sighed and said, "Now that this child has also been punished, let's call it a day." Jerry nodded slightly and said, "I'm afraid my home has exploded like this. I'm afraid I've really been punished by heaven. I never expected that Tang San would remain silent on weekdays, with a sensible appearance, but secretly engage in theft. It's also the fault that Tang Hao drinks excessively all day, depletes his family's wealth, and neglects his children on a daily basis, which is why this child has gone bad. This Tang Hao is truly a useless father. A few days later, as the new year came to an end, lanterns and colorful decorations were hung in front of each house in Xinghun village. Damn it! Tang San, wrapped in fabric, lay in his own bedroom, his face looking very ugly. With a clattering sound of footsteps, Tang Hao walked in carrying a wooden bowl, and the pungent smell of traditional Chinese medicine filled the entire bedroom. Grandpa, here it is. In the north house of the village, Zhu Wu brought vegetables to Grandpa Zhu Gang, who was enjoying the Chinese New Year. Only Tang San's injured world has been achieved for the first time. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. The Way to Take Death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. The Way to Take Death. So, these are two complementary techniques. In the morning, facing the sunrise, Zhu Wu practiced Vajra several times, and based on his personal experience during this period, he made a summary in his heart. Practicing the Vajra technique in the morning facing the sun for too long can make the body feel increasingly hot and dry. If there is a fire burning in the abdomen, the heart rate will accelerate, followed by dry mouth, long bumps on the face, hard yellow spots when using the toilet, and insomnia at night. All kinds of symptoms, even if he had studied veterinary medicine in his past life, he knew it was due to getting overheated. And these symptoms manifest particularly rapidly during practice when the sun rises high. The most peculiar and coincidental thing is, on the contrary, practicing longevity gong can effectively alleviate these symptoms, and it is particularly evident to practice at night. However, one should not practice longevity gong for a long time, otherwise it will cause coldness in the body and make hands and feet feel inexplicably cold. Just like being caught in a cold wind, I can't sleep at night. Moderate cultivation, after practicing Vajra, will make you feel strong all over, while Changsho Gong is refreshing and invigorating. To be honest, this reminds him of the Dragon God. According to the sequel, the Dragon God can grow up by absorbing the sun and the moon, that is, the essence of the sun and the moon, before he touches the chi of chaos. The former brings a powerful physical body to the Dragon God, giving rise to ultimate power. The latter brings powerful divine consciousness to the Dragon God and gradually develops the ability to control various elements of heaven and earth. The Golden Dragon King inherits the former, while the Silver Dragon King is the latter. That is to say, in this world, absorbing the radiance of the sun can strengthen the physical body, just like Superman in previous movies, who can continuously enhance his strength by absorbing the light and radiation of the yellow sun, and obtain a steel body. And absorbing the radiance of the moon, which is the radiance of the moon, appears to strengthen divine consciousness, that is, spiritual power. So, when my Vajra and longevity skills reach the Douluo continent, not only can they be used to cultivate soul power, but one can also assist in absorbing the sun's radiance to refine the body, and the other can absorb the moon's radiance to refine the spirit. Thinking about this, I couldn't help but think of this possibility. So, Vajra Gong is suitable for practicing during the morning sunrise and is aimed at beginners. In the morning, the sunlight is weak, and beginners can absorb it at this time to avoid inhaling too much of the so-called sunshine radiance at once, which may cause discomfort symptoms such as excessive heat in the body. Even if the internal heat is too strong, burning oneself. At night, practicing longevity gong not only absorbs the so-called moonlight radiance, but also inhales the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, which is transformed into soul power by martial souls. This should be harmless, but precisely because it is at night, the weather is cold, so in the process of absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it is inevitable to bring in the yin and cold energy in the air. That's why I only felt a hint of coolness in my body before. Based on the medical knowledge learned in his past life, Zhu Wu boldly made a hypothesis by pushing humans from beasts. Vajra Gong is based on the principles of yang, hardness, external manifestation, physical manifestation, and postnatal development. Longevity Gong is based on the principles of yin, softness, internal manifestation, concealment, spirituality, and innate development. The two are practiced together, with a combination of internal and external elements, balancing hardness and softness, and balancing yin and yang. Not to mention it, although the specific situation is unclear, I don't understand either. But when it comes to textual introductions and online introductions of the diamond longevity technique, it's really right. If that's really the case, then it's amazing. As a great living person, the body and the spirit must be inseparable. If these two skills can really complement each other, let him take the initiative to absorb the essence of the sun and the moon, and both go hand in hand. He felt that achieving the dragon god in the future was not a dream. After all, the dragon god also grew up by absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon. Well, if I live long enough, lifespan is indeed a big issue. Who knows how long it took the dragon god to absorb the essence of the sun and the moon to grow to that level. Anyway, let's practice it first before we talk. The future is not a dream, but ultimately it is the future. Seizing the present is the right thing. In a moment, Zhu Wu walked out of the house to the backyard, picked up the backpack he had prepared yesterday, and strode towards the door. After the new year, the Polygonum multiflorum is almost eaten by Xiao Bai, and he should go out to pick herbs. As for staying at home focused on cultivation, there was nothing he could do. One became overheated after practicing for a long time, and the other became physically cold after practicing for a long time. His small body couldn't withstand it, and he was also very helpless. However, there is no hesitation. After all, nothing in this world is absolutely perfect, people need to know how to be content. Walking into the back mountain, wielding a firewood knife, we advanced towards the unexplored area. Gigi, Little Bai transformed into a magpie flying above his head, as a warning for Zhu Wu to explore the way. Time flies, 2 months have passed, deep in the mountains. I'll go, it's so big. Xiao Bai, it's done beautifully. Zhu Wu's eyes lit up as he looked at the scattered ginseng leaves on the ground ahead. Gigi. Xiao Bai landed on his shoulder, lifted his head, and looked proud and coquettish. It's just a little worse than the last one, it's not bad. After a period of excavation, the whole ginseng was exposed, and Zhu Wu smiled. There are also advantages to being out of place. The Holy Soul Village is located near the border and is also close to the star forest that separates the two countries. There are also many deep mountains and forests that are rarely visited by people around, so the medicinal resources are not poor. After all, it is a fantasy world, with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, often nurtured by spiritual objects. On a previous exploration, he was fortunate enough to find a 100-year-old ginseng plant with the help of Xiao Bai. He didn't quite understand it for hundreds of years, and he had never learned the method of discernment in his past life and present life. But it is indeed quite large, with extremely developed roots. It was precisely because of that ginseng plant that he gained a new understanding of the ability of Xiao Bai to evolve by swallowing natural resources and treasures. He found that Xiao Bai had a strong preference for medicinal herbs with nourishing qi and blood effects, whether it was helping him perceive and search for them or consuming them on his own. Moreover, taking such medicinal herbs does not increase Xiao Bai's soul power, but it can nourish his qi and blood, achieving the effect of strengthening his body. The specific method of backfeeding is unclear, but it is known that during the time when Xiao Bai consumed the century-old ginseng plant, his complexion was significantly stronger than before, his complexion was rosy and shiny, and his cold resistance greatly increased. At that time, it was still winter and the weather was very cold, so he felt it deeply. Putting it further forward, he really didn't notice. Perhaps it's because these types of herbs can help novices make up for their roots. He guessed so. Qi and blood, act on blood, or is the beneficial substance or energy that is specifically targeted at the host's blood vessels and has the effect of nourishing and enhancing blood vessels. After all, the martial soul is integrated with the host. Only when the host's bloodline is enhanced and the strength and potential of the physical body are enhanced, can the martial soul evolve to the corresponding height. From a certain perspective, the physical strength of the host determines the upper limit of the evolution of the martial soul. Yu Xiaojiang is an example. It is very likely that the physical body is not good enough, or that the corresponding blood quantity or purity is not enough, which leads to the malignant degeneration of the martial soul. And the reason why Xiaobai prefers qi and blood-based heavenly and earthly treasures is precisely this. Because swallowing such medicinal herbs can not only accumulate the energy required for evolution, but also feed back to the host, nourish the blood vessels, and enhance the body. Of course, these are just his speculations, and it is still unknown whether they are correct or not. But based on his personal experience during this period, he feels very likely to be right. Let's use time to prove all of this, he thought as he handed ginseng to his shoulder in front of Little White Eyebrow. Little White skillfully stretched his neck, making his eyebrows close, and then the colorful light flashed, and the ginseng in front disappeared. Zhu Wu stood up and smiled, let's go. We've been out for 3 days now, and we should go back too. 2 months later, as he delved deeper into his exploration, his time outside also grew longer and longer. Fortunately, Xiaobai has a certain ability to foresee danger, otherwise he wouldn't dare to go out and run so far alone. I believe Grandpa is already very worried at home, he said, turning around and returning the same way. I don't know which mountain Tang Hao's Blue Silver Emperor's mountain is, as mentioned in the original work, it's close to Holy Soul Village. On the way, I couldn't help but think, let's wait until we have stronger strength in the future to find it. It's a waste of time to find it now. Shake your head and continue moving forward. Compared to aimless exploration, the return journey is always faster. In just over a day, Zhu Wu arrived in the mountains and forests near the Holy Soul Village. At this time, it was evening, and there was still a red glow in the sky. The lights and smoke at the foot of the mountain could still be seen clearly. Xiao Bai, go and collect all the herbs on top for me, Zhu Wu nodded slightly and whispered. Tang San, you should return what you stole from me, he thought to himself. Calculating the time, at this point, it should be just a few days before the start of Nodding College, and he should also take action. Gigi. Little Bai nodded and flapped his wings as he flew away. Not long after, the original path returned and landed on the shoulder. After shaking his shoulders and carrying his basket, Zhu Wu turned around and took a detour down the mountain, then strode back home from the west of the village. Xiao Wu, have you come back? The villager greeted Zhu Wu with a smile, looking back at the basket with curiosity in his eyes. How about going out for so long, have you dug up any good medicine? I'm not very lucky this time, they're all worthless. Zhu Wu reached out and lifted the lid of his backpack, tilting his body to show off. However, along the way, he also pulled out some bird eggs and some mushrooms. Aunt Wang, would you like to bring a few back for dinner? It's not good if there's nothing in the basket when he comes back. He deliberately left something bad outside. Forget it, your trip wasn't easy either, the woman named Wang shook her head. Xiaowu, why don't you hurry back? Your grandfather has been worried about you these past few days since you left. Zhu Wu nodded repeatedly, took a step forward, and said, goodbye, Aunt Wang. Aunt Wang nodded with a smile and watched as Zhu Wu left. Polygonum multiflorum, astragalus membranaceous, kidney essence grass. In the distance, Tang San heard the sound of conversation coming to the door, and the purple light in his eyes dissipated. Kidney essence grass. The effect came to mind, and his face couldn't help but darken. He clenched his fist and turned back to the room. Why do you want to make up for the missing egg? On the other hand, Zhu Wu walked home with a happy mood. Intentionally walking to the west of the village and talking to the villagers, naturally hoping to show Tang San the medicinal herbs in his basket and prove that the medicine on the mountaintop was not taken by him. By the way, use the collected kidney essence, grass, and qi of Tang San. Kidney essence grass, also known as owl in previous lives, has the function of strengthening the waist and tonifying the kidneys, and is very popular among men. It's the same in this world, he always picks. Without him, the sales are too good, don't worry about selling. Furthermore, it must be said that Tang San is truly a man with half of his body being the bloodline of the soul beast Blue Silver Emperor, and his self-healing ability is a bit impressive. In addition, at a young age, the body's recovery ability is already good, and one also possesses Xuantian Gong, a technique with healing effects. Such a serious injury, I can bounce around again in less than 2 months. Of course, no matter how strong the self-healing ability is, it is impossible to have an extra one out of thin air. So, he can't lose the title of Tang San's lonely testicular warrior. It was night, and Zhu Wu and his grandfather Zhu Gang had dinner happily, and then began practicing the longevity technique. There was nothing to say overnight. The next morning, at the top of the West Mountain in the village. Who is it? Who exactly is it? Surprisingly stealing my herb, it's really a way to die. Tang San's face turned chilly as he watched the herbs disappear around him. The first thing that came to mind was Zhu Wu's face. He just returned last night and lost his medicine this morning, which is very suspicious. The next moment, with a slightly relaxed brow, he denied this speculation again. Too coincidental, even to the point where he felt it was deliberate. Moreover, yesterday after finishing Zhu Wu's backpack, he also looked at the abundance of things in it, and there were no herbs he planted here. Furthermore, although there are not many herbs planted on this, their size is not small. Even if they are peeled off, it is not easy to take them all away, and there will always be some traces left. But here, there is no artificial trace left, which is really unbelievable. After carefully examining the surroundings, Tang San himself felt a bit unbelievable. The herbs around here seem to have disappeared out of thin air. He doesn't believe that Zhu Wu, as a child, possesses such abilities, even as a disciple of the Tang clan. Anyway, Zhu Wu can still be listed as a suspect. Let's go investigate tonight. With this thought in mind, he took a deep breath and jumped onto the boulder to sit down and start practicing the purple extreme magic eye. That night, Zhu Wu's family in the north of the village. Isn't it really Zhu Wu? Upon closer inspection, Tang San did not find any evidence. Moreover, Zhu Wu stayed at home all day today and did not go out, which also eliminated the possibility of Zhu Wu hiding the herbs before transferring them. Anyway, stealing from me is not a good thing. I need to observe more these days, especially those villagers who are out. Stealing my medicinal herbs is nothing more than selling money, he thought, glancing at the bamboo house and turning to leave. A few more days later, at the western peak of the village. There are no mountains or forests around, and no traces have been found. The villagers who went out did not find any herbs carrying me. Zhu Wu can now rule out suspicion and has not left home in the past few days. Such clever theft methods are not something that a child can do. Did it be taken by a passing soul master? Tang San couldn't help but think of the omnipotent soul master that old Jack spoke of. Wrinkled his brow, jumped off the boulder, and headed straight down the mountain. Approaching the door, I happened to see old Jack walking towards his own house with Zhu Wu in the distance, each carrying their own bags. Are you leaving today? Sigh and accelerate into the room. Go into the kitchen to fill the stove with fire, fill a bowl of congee and drink it yourself, then take a piece of charcoal from the ground and write a few lines beside it, then go into the bedroom, pick up the bag and walk out of the door. As soon as I left, I saw old Jack approaching and waving hello. Xiao San, let's go. Your lazy dad won't get up. Old Jack glanced inside the room and shook his head. Grandpa, keep your voice down. Dad doesn't like being woken up in the morning. Tang San raised his hand and made a silent gesture. What a filial son he is. So, why not teach your father Tangman's unique skills? Zhu Wu, standing behind old Jack, said in secret. Then Tang San approached with a bundle on his back, his gaze flickering over, his face cold and silent. Zhu Wu smiled politely. "Let's go." Old Jack turned his head and whispered, taking his steps. Zhu Wu quickly caught up. 3 people walked together towards the outside of the village. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Is here, he is here. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 is here, he is here. The Holy Soul Village is not far from Notting City, and it took the 3 of them half a day to walk to the city gate. "Xiao San, Xiao Wu, your grandfather will send you to the college and then go back. After entering the college, you must listen to the teacher's words." Entering the city, patiently admonishing, old Jack continued, "When the semester is over, Grandpa will come back to pick you up." "Grandpa Jack, are you in such a hurry to leave?" Tang San couldn't help but say. People who are decades old, when you see Tang Sanyi in a panic, Zhu Wu secretly complains to himself. "Why didn't you panic when you came to my house to steal things? The hotel is not affordable for ordinary people like us." Old Jack smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Let's go." Tang San and Zhu Wu continued on, inquiring about the location of Notting College from passers-by on the way. After a while, the 3 of them saw a huge stone arch that was 20 meters wide and 10 meters high from a distance. Below was a wide iron gate, and in the lower left corner was a small door, with a gatekeeper pavilion standing next to it. Looking back, the road is wide with lush trees on both sides. The 4 signboards of Notting College, painted in gold, hang quietly above the arch. Soul Masters are indeed a privileged class in this world, and even a junior Soul Master Academy is built so well, sighed Zhu Wuyin. As he looked around, he continued walking with old Jack. "What are you doing? Is this the place where you rural people can come?" I heard a sharp shout before getting close to the door. Looking around, a young man sitting in the gatekeeper's booth walked out with a disdainful expression in his eyes, looking like he had pulled himself into 205. "The great god of Tang said that you already have the way to take death." Zhu Wuyu instinctively glanced at Tang San standing on the other side of old Jack. Sure enough, Tang San's eyebrows furrowed slightly, and his expression looked somewhat displeased. "This little brother, we are from Holy Soul Village," old Jack explained with a smirk. "Joke. Can a golden phoenix still jump out of the grass nest?" The young man looked disdainful and spoke in a sinister tone. "There haven't been any seedlings with soul power in the vicinity of Notting City for many years. You're a small village, and 2 of them suddenly pop up. Let's just lie to ghosts." "Little brother, this is true." Old Jack slightly straightened his chest. "Look, this is the certificate issued by the Deacon Su Yuntao of the Martial Soul Hall." Speaking, he took out the proof from his arms and handed it over. Upon hearing old Jack say that Su Yuntao was the steward, the young man's eyebrows furrowed, apparently believing a bit. He turned his head and glanced at Tang San and Zhu Wu, then turned back to old Jack, reached out to take the certificate, and grabbed it with his hands apart, his eyes rubbing against the ground and getting angry. "Damn it, old man, you're playing with me. Looking up is like spitting out fragrance. The blue silver grass martial soul has innate full soul power, while the silkworm martial soul has innate level 6 soul power. Even if you're fake, you have to make it look like something. I've been working in this academy for 4 years, do you really think I don't understand anything?" she said, slightly tilting her neck and looking like a knowledgeable cultural person. She snorted coldly. These 2 types of martial souls are recognized as useless martial souls, and it's impossible to awaken such high soul power. After finishing speaking, he threw the 2 certificates to the ground and said, "Get out of here. If you dare to cause trouble again, don't blame me for being impolite." Old Jack's face turned red with anger, and he quickly bent down to pick up the proof, but was preempted by Zhu Wu. Seeing this, he no longer struggled to pick it up, but continued to look up at the young man and angrily said, "You are clearly deliberately causing trouble. Humph, you wait for me here. I will go to the Martial Soul Branch Hall to find the deacon to preside over justice and let him evaluate it. Can't it be true, right? The young man's face suddenly became a bit flustered. What are you pretending to be a security guard who earns such a small monthly salary? Regardless of whether he is true or false, he should be reviewed by his own supervisor, right? The key is, you really have a big heart. The certificates issued by the Martial Soul Hall were even thrown away, indicating that Zhu Wu was truly brave enough to pick them up. He looked up at the young man and felt a bit angry in his heart. Being arrogant does not break the law, nor does it lead to death, but he deserves to be beaten. Xiao San, Xiao Wu, let's go. Seeing that Zhu Wu had already picked up the certificate, old Jack angrily turned around. Zhu Wu caught a glimpse of Tang San's left hand, which had already been slightly lifted. He's here, truly Tang San. He really dares. He said he was shocked. In front of the entrance of Soul Master Academy, there are still people around who dare to kill someone. Returning to the Holy Soul Village, I think the Beggar Village is pretty much the same. Although feeling panicked and depressed, the young guard muttered stubbornly. What are you saying? Old Jack became angry and suddenly turned around to glare at the young man. What? I'm not convinced. Am I wrong? The young man was startled and took a step back. Later on, it seemed that he felt ashamed of an old man and became angry. To save face, he strode forward and raised his hand to push old Jack. As he raised his hand, he mocked, "You're all covered in patches. I think you're from the Beggar's Village. Go, go. I have a bad temper." As soon as the young man's palm was about to push onto old Jack's chest, Zhu Wu lifted his foot directly, showing a childish aura on his mouth. Bad guys, don't bully my grandfather. However, Tang San was even faster, swinging his left hand upwards and patting the young man's outstretched left hand. He took a step forward and happened to step on the young man's ankle. The young man suddenly stumbled under his feet, and Tang San pushed his hands towards his lower abdomen. Zhu Wu lifted his foot just in time to keep up. With a thud, he kicked the young man with a tingling calf. Hiss. The young man sat on the ground with a loud bang as if he had been electrocuted. Kick to the numb tendon. Tang San, who was knowledgeable, couldn't help but glance at Zhu Wu. Of course, he just felt that the opponent was lucky enough to kick him. Xiao San, Xiao Wu, old Jack was startled and instinctively exclaimed. Stinky kid, you're looking for death. The young man was angry and was about to kick Zhu Wu, who hurt him the most, with just one foot on his mat. Zhu Wu was startled and his body instinctively jumped back, while the remaining light swept over him. Shortcut, with one hand carrying posture, looking like a person in their 40s or 50s. It is obvious that the middle-aged man walking nearby is Yu Xiaojiang. He, who was familiar with the plot, had already been paying attention to the surroundings. This old man had seen a conflict between them for a long time, but he didn't shout to stop it. Instead, he walked over slowly until the guard shouted out his innate soul power, blue-silver grass, before accelerating his pace. However, there was still no word to stop on the way. Shouting from a distance, afraid of hurting your old throat. Are you pretending to be your horse? Although he had no obligation to help, witnessing the process firsthand, he felt that Yu Xiaojiang was pretending to be true love. Alright, stop it. In his line of sight, Yu Xiaojiang, who was about to walk towards Tang San, finally spoke calmly. Master, you're back. The young man's face froze for a moment, and then he turned around in pain, nodding and bowing. Yu Xiaojiang didn't bother him at all. Instead, he turned his head to look at Zhu Wu and spoke calmly, Child, can you show me the proof of the Martial Soul Hall? Zhu Wu nodded and handed it over. Grandpa, here you are. End of this chapter. Chapter 10, please continue your performance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10, please continue your performance. Grandpa Yu Xiaojiang's expression was clearly stunned, but he quickly recovered. There are indeed many early marriages among ordinary families on the mainland, and at his age alone, there are also many who have become grandparents. So it's not a problem for the child in front of me to call like that. Reached out to take the certificate and lowered his head to scan. Zhu Wu looked up, and Yu Xiaojiang's eyes lit up noticeably. Then he skipped him and turned his head to look at another Tang San, taking a few glances up and down. His gaze was not sharp, but in Tang San's eyes, there was a feeling of being seen through, and his eyebrows couldn't help but furrow slightly. As if sensing the change in Tang San's expression, Yu Xiaojiang withdrew his gaze and turned to look at old Jack. "There's no problem with the proof, sir. I apologize for what happened just now. Let's leave these two children to me next." "No need to apologize," old Jack quickly waved his hand and then said, "Well, this master, these two children will trouble you." He turned his head and warned, "Third, Xiaowu, hurry up and go in with the master. After you go in, be obedient and don't cause trouble for the master." Zhu Wu nodded lightly. Tang San nodded slightly, but did not speak. "It's not that I didn't ignore the so-called master next to me, but that even if the master didn't appear in front of me and stop him, there was still a way to solve it just now." In fact, he had already opened the sleeve arrow insurance when the guard threw his certificate on the ground. If it weren't for this master stopping early, then the gatekeeper wouldn't have jumped at him. Perhaps by now, there was already a short arrow in his throat. The general outline of the Xuantian Treasure Record is recorded, which states that if the opponent is an enemy and has a way to take death, there is no need to be lenient, otherwise it will only add trouble to oneself. In his opinion, the gatekeeper who had just spoken rudely, then lost his proof, and even attacked an old man was already the way to death. And he has absolute confidence in killing old Jack and Zhu Wu without realizing it was him. In his thoughts, Yu Xiaojiang glanced at the guard and said lightly, "I don't want to hear about it again." Yes, the young man nodded like pounding garlic. Yu Xiaojiang stopped looking at him and lowered his head slightly. He naturally moved his hand, which was the proof of the martial soul hall, towards his back. With the other hand, he grabbed Tang San's wrist and a slightly stiff smile appeared on his face. His hoarse voice was much softer. "Let's go in," he said, seems to have been despised. "So, I am redundant," Zhu Wu said in his heart. I'll just hang on and not leave later. I have a different surname from Tang San, and my martial soul is also different. It's obvious that I'm not in the same family. It depends on whether you have the courage to say in front of me, an outsider, that Tang San is a twin martial soul. There are really signs, and it's not too late for me to interrupt and leave." I secretly thought to myself. Yu Xiaojiang didn't say much and walked inside the Tang Dynasty Academy. Zhu Wu also followed suit. Entering the college and walking, Tang San's voice came, "Teacher, thank you." "Teacher. I'm not a teacher in this college," said the master calmly, looking down at Tang San. The familiar plot, Zhu Wu watched quietly. Until the classic conversation between the two arrives. "Unless you really want me to be your teacher. Are you going to teach me how to cultivate martial souls? Are you willing or not?" Tang San remained silent, just looking up at Yu Xiaojiang quietly. Zhu Wu continued to follow and remained silent. On the other side, Yu Xiaojiang stared blankly at Tang San and smiled, "You are indeed a smart child." Then he turned his head to look at Zhu Wu and said calmly, "Xiao Wu, can I call you that?" Is this going to show Tang San the theory of forced show on me?" Zhu Wu immediately guessed this possibility and nodded, "You are an elder, of course you can." Tang San glanced at Yu Xiaojiang, lost in thought, and stopped interrupting. "If I'm not mistaken, your silkworm martial soul should be a mutated martial soul, right?" Yu Xiaojiang nodded. "I'm not sure about this either," Zhu Wu scratched his head, with a look on his face that I don't understand anything. "Don't ask, you just don't understand." Yu Xiaojiang nodded slightly and said to himself, I have investigated 586 people who have awakened their silkworm martial souls, of which 15 have soul power, with a chance of less than 3%. And among these 15 people, half of them have soul power not exceeding level 1, and very few have reached level 1. However, one exception is that her soul power not only exceeds level 1, but also reaches an astonishing innate level 8 soul power. The reason is none other than that she awakened a mutated martial soul, which is a rare ice silkworm martial soul. This was what he saw when he was researching at the Martial Soul Hall. The person who awakened the martial soul was a woman from Tianshui Academy and had been dead for many years. The prototype reality is that it is a rare soul beast that lives in the northern part of the Tiando Empire. It not only has ice attributes, but also has a certain spiritual talent and is good at hiding. When encountering enemies, it will transform into other high-level soul beasts to scare them away. Your martial soul certificate does not indicate that you have ice attributes, so it is obvious that your martial soul has not awakened such talents. Otherwise, the Martial Soul Hall will definitely persuade you to join and will never give you the opportunity to come to Notting College as a work student. Any martial soul with attributes such as ice and fire will exhibit certain characteristics when awakened. Because once awakened, the host cannot control the martial soul yet. The temperature of the air around the ice attribute will drop, and the fire attribute martial soul will emit flames, etc. If such a vision really appears, I think as long as the deacon who helps you awaken the martial soul is not a fool, he can definitely see it. Speaking of this, Yu Xiaojiang smiled slightly and said confidently, so, I can predict that your silkworm martial soul will awaken with almost identical appearance to an ordinary silkworm. That's why the deacon of the Martial Soul Hall mistakenly recognized it as an ordinary silkworm martial soul. It can awaken 6 levels of innate soul power without any explicit attributability. So, I think your martial soul ability should be biased towards the spiritual aspect. And it is highly likely to be a hallucinogenic ability. I didn't expect this person to have such insight. Tang San's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Zhu Wu's awakened martial soul indeed looked no different from an ordinary silkworm, which he had witnessed with his own eyes. Yu Xiaojiang caught Tang San's slight expression change in his spare time, his mouth curling uncontrollably, and his chest straightened accordingly. Oh, so if you know the only person who has awakened the mutated silkworm martial soul, the martial soul possesses other non-explicit abilities, such as time, space, water, light, and so on. Did the direction you just gave me for determining the martial soul also change? Zhu Wu expressed a different opinion. But he wasn't prepared to show it, but scratched his head and said, my martial soul does look like a silkworm. I don't know if ability is a mental aspect. Yu Xiaojiang's expression was firm, and he didn't let Zhu Wu release his martial soul for a detailed investigation. Instead, he said with regret, spiritual abilities are also considered good abilities. In the future, we can consider adding soul rings that can provide enchanting and hallucinating soul skills to martial souls, which can barely develop towards the direction of control. However, I don't recommend you doing this. Ah. Why is this? Zhu Wu pretended to be surprised and quickly asked. Please continue your performance. End of this chapter.